In the gray drizzle of Spokane, Washington, a city of quiet streets and faded industrial charm, a young woman's frantic plea shattered the calm of a sleepy police precinct. It was April 2012, and what began as a routine evening would unravel into a nightmare that exposed the darkest corners of human nature. A secret, hidden behind the walls of a rundown apartment, was about to spill into the open, revealing a horror so grotesque it would haunt the city for years. What drove a young bartender to confess to murder, and what lurked in the shadows of her story? Clara Wren, 22, was a bartender at a dive bar in Spokane's Hillyard district, a gritty neighborhood known for its working-class roots and late-night haunts. Struggling to keep her small thrift store afloat alongside her boyfriend, Theo Vance, Clara lived a life of long shifts and mounting debts. Their store's bank account held just $900, a far cry from the wealth her coworker, Tessa Lorne, bragged about to impress clients. Clara's world was one of fleeting tips, fake smiles, and the constant grind to stay ahead in a city that rarely slowed down. On that rainy April afternoon, Clara burst into the Spokane police precinct, her face ashen and her hands shaking. Theo trailed behind, his eyes wide with worry. She demanded to see the precinct captain, her voice breaking as she claimed to have information about a crime too horrific for anyone else. The desk officers, used to handling bar fights and petty thefts, eyed her disheveled jacket and wild expression with skepticism. They told her to file a report at the Hillyard substation, where her story allegedly took place, but Clara refused to budge, her panic palpable.
At the Hillyard substation, Clara S. firent boile d'ovaire.
After hesitating, she blurted out a confession that stunned the room: "I killed someone." The officers, staring at the slight young woman in thrift store chic, struggled to see her as a killer. Her story sounded like a fever dream, her words tripping over each other. Theo stepped in, his voice steady but urgent. "She's not lying," he said. "Two guys from Boise forced her. They killed a woman she knew. They burned the body, chopped it up, and melted it down with chemicals." The officer's disbelief wavered as Theo's details grew too specific to ignore. He urged them to check local hardware stores for recent purchases of industrial-grade acid, a claim so bizarre it demanded investigation. Officer Riley Quinn was sent to escort Clara and Theo to nearby suppliers. At a chemical wholesaler, the manager confirmed their story. Two men with Idaho accents had bought several 50-gallon drums of sulfuric acid the previous day, an unusual order for individuals, not factories. Quinn radioed the precinct, his voice tight with urgency. The substation captain, a grizzled veteran named Paul Decker, took Clara into a private room. "Tell me everything," he said, his tone calm but firm. "If you were forced, we'll take that into account. But you need to be straight with us." Clara broke down, sobbing as she recounted a nightmare that began at her bar. She had befriended Tessa Lorne, a new bartender who seemed eager to connect. Tessa, with her tales of rich clients and big money, invited Clara to meet two high-roller customers at her apartment. Desperate for cash to save her store, Clara agreed. The men, brothers Gideon Holt and Silas Holt, arrived with Tessa. Gideon, the older, had a commanding presence, a wolf tattoo visible on his arm. Silas, quieter and wearing thick glasses, seemed less threatening but equally intense. They drank and talked, with Tessa exaggerating Clara's wealth to impress them. Clara, caught up in the moment, didn't correct the lies. But the night turned dark when Tessa handed her a spiked drink. Moments later, Clara blacked out. She awoke bound with zip ties, her clothes gone. The brothers were yelling at Tessa for lying about Clara's money, furious that her fortune was only $900. Gideon turned to Clara, his eyes cold. "Live or die?" he asked. Terrified, she chose life, agreeing to their demands. Their order was unthinkable: lure another woman to the apartment and kill her. Clara begged, but Gideon pressed a knife to her throat, counting down from 3. Silas added, "If you don't, we'll let the other girl kill you. We just need one." With no choice, Clara called Ivy Sage, a regular at the bar who wanted to buy some of Clara's vintage bags. When Ivy arrived, the brothers ambushed her, tying her up and beating her. They forced Clara to stab her, threatening her life if she refused. Sobbing, Clara drove the knife into Ivy's neck, blood pooling as she collapsed. The brothers smirked, telling Clara she was now tied to them by her crime. What followed was worse. They ordered Clara and Tessa to buy an industrial shredder to dispose of the body. When it jammed, they chopped the corpse and dissolved it in acid. Unmeltable parts were boiled in oil, the apartment reeking of death. Clara overheard them joking about eating a kidney, claiming it was fresh. Her terror deepened, but escape seemed impossible until Theo noticed her distress and forced her to go to the police. As Clara finished her story, her phone buzzed with Tessa's call, demanding money by nightfall. The police saw their chance, but could they trap these monsters before they slipped away? The Spokane police precinct hummed with urgency as Captain Decker rallied a team for a covert raid on Clara's Hillyard apartment. Her chilling confession, backed by the chemical supplier's report, erased any doubts about the case's severity. Time was slipping away. Tessa's call had set a deadline, and the Holt brothers could vanish into the night. The officers moved silently, avoiding sirens to preserve the element of surprise. Clara, still trembling, guided them to the rundown building, its cracked windows and faded paint blending into the neighborhood's decay. The team took positions, some crouching behind dumpsters, others blending into the shadows of nearby buildings. Clara, her heart pounding, was told to knock on the apartment door. Her hands shook as she rapped lightly, her voice barely audible as she called out. After a tense wait, Gideon Holt opened the door, his Boise accent sharp. "Where's the cash?" he snapped. Clara's eyes flicked to the hidden officers, a mistake Gideon caught instantly. With a curse, he shoved her back and slammed the door, the lock clicking shut. The police surged forward, battering the reinforced door, but it held fast. Inside, Gideon shouted to Silas, "Cops! Move!" They scrambled to a back window, kicking out the frame and leaping onto a neighboring roof. By the time the officers pried the door open with a crowbar, the brothers were gone, lost in Hilliard's maze of alleys. Inside, the apartment was a scene from a nightmare. A pot of oil simmered on the stove, filled with human fragments. In the fridge, a kidney sat beside a six-pack of beer. Tessa Lorne, caught in the bedroom, surrendered without a fight, her face pale but composed. Tessa's interrogation began immediately. She spoke calmly, admitting her role in the crimes while claiming coercion. She met the Holt brothers in late 2011 at a Boise bar where she worked. They were regulars, charming but rough around the edges. One night, they lured her to a rented apartment, promising extra cash for a private gig. Once there, they bound her with zip ties and held a knife to her throat, demanding her savings. With only a few $100s, Tessa begged for her life, offering to do anything. The brothers saw potential. They forced her to prove loyalty by luring another woman to the apartment and killing her. Tessa chose Lila Fern, a former co-worker she despised for stealing tips. She tricked Lila into coming over, promising a wealthy client. The brothers tied Lila up, robbed her, and handed Tessa a knife. Driven by fear and resentment, Tessa stabbed Lila, her hand steadying with each blow. The brothers praised her, saying she was part of the crew, her fate sealed by blood. Tessa became their accomplice, moving with them from Boise to Spokane. They targeted vulnerable women bartenders, escorts, runaways, luring them with promises of cash, then robbing and killing them. Bodies were shredded, dissolved in acid, or boiled in oil, with some organs kept for grotesque meals. Tessa insisted she acted under duress, but her calm recounting suggested she had embraced the role.
The police dug into the brothers' past. Gideon Holt, 28, was the mastermind, a lifelong troublemaker from a small Idaho town.
His father, a former sheriff's deputy, had bailed him out of juvenile arrests, fostering a sense of untouchability. Gideon's rap sheet included theft and burglary, but his father's influence secured early releases. He even arranged a marriage to an unsuspecting nurse, hiding Gideon's past. Silas, 25, was a high school dropout who followed his brother's lead, burning through a family loan on gambling and parties. When money ran dry, they turned to crime, targeting women they saw as disposable. Tessa's confession revealed 9 murders before Ivy Sage, spanning Boise and Spokane. The police locked down Spokane, but the brothers had fled, likely on a Greyhound bus. The manhunt expanded, with every precinct in the Northwest on alert. As investigators sifted through Tessa's words, one question loomed: where were the Holts, and how many more would die before they were stopped?
The Holt brothers escape sans Spokane's police into overdrive.
The gruesome evidence in Clara's apartment human remains in a pot. A kidney in the fridge confirmed their brutality, but their disappearance into the rainy night left the city on edge. The case escalated to a federal level, with the FBI joining the hunt.
A special task force pourrait ouvrir Tessa's confession, mapping the brothers' trail from Boise to Spokane.
Her account of their methods luring women, robbing them, and disposing of bodies with chilling efficiency painted a picture of calculated evil. Tessa described a haunting case in Boise involving Nora Vale, a strong-willed escort who nearly escaped. After being bound, Nora broke free and leapt from a second-story window, fracturing her ankle. The brothers recaptured her, and she died from internal injuries. Before her death, she stared at them with a defiant smile, a moment that rattled even Gideon. Her eyes wouldn't leave me, he later admitted. Tessa's role as bait was crucial, but her claim of being a victim rang hollow as she described cooking a victim's organ with unsettling calm. The task force cross-referenced missing persons reports with Tessa's accounts. A pattern emerged. Women from dive bars and shady motels had vanished in cities where the brothers operated. In Tacoma, a lead pointed to Juniper Reed, a 16-year-old runaway who worked as a barback. Found hiding in a cheap motel, Juniper was terrified, her story echoing Clara's. She had been kidnapped by the brothers, forced to lure friends to their deaths. She witnessed 3 murders in Tacoma, her silence bought with threats. Guilt drove her to flee, but not before overhearing the brothers mention an ex-girlfriend, Eden Quill, in Boise.
The task force traquait Eden.
Her ID was used to rent a room in Portland, Oregon, 350 miles from Spokane. The brothers were moving, likely with Eden as an accomplice or hostage. Learning from the botched Spokane raid, Portland police planned a meticulous sting. Over 100 officers surrounded a seedy motel in the city's outskirts. A female agent posed as a maid, knocking to replace towels. When Eden opened the door, the team stormed in, catching Gideon and Silas in the bathroom, mid-dismemberment of another victim. A drum of acid bubbled nearby, half-dissolving a limb. Eden screamed, while the brothers stayed eerily calm. The arrests ended the spree, but the investigation deepened. Gideon admitted to 13 murders, claiming 11 lives and stealing nearly $80,000. He spoke of killing as no different than hunting. Silas detailed their disposal methods, perfected over months. Eden's role was ambiguous. She claimed coercion but had joined willingly, participating in the Portland murder. Juniper's testimony provided key leads, including the brothers' use of Eden's ID to stay off the radar. The case exposed systemic gaps. The Spokane police's initial dismissal of Clara's claims delayed justice, letting the brothers flee. Unregulated chemical sales fueled their crimes, and society's neglect of vulnerable women bartenders, runaways enabled the spree. As the trial loomed, the prosecution faced a challenge, balancing justice for the brothers' cold-blooded acts with leniency for coerced accomplices like Clara and Juniper. The victims' families, learning of their daughters' fates, demanded answers, their grief a heavy weight on a city forever changed. With the Holt brothers, Tessa, Eden, and Juniper in custody, Spokane's police precinct became a hub of intense investigation. Forensic teams scoured the Hillyard apartment, finding blood traces, chemical burns, and a fridge with human tissue. The industrial shredder, returned to a hardware store, was recovered, its blades holding traces of bone. The task force worked tirelessly, piecing together a case that spanned 2 states and 11 victims. The brothers' chilling efficiency and the women's varying degrees of complicity painted a complex picture of crime and coercion. Gideon Holt's interrogation revealed a remorseless predator. He described the murders as business, a quick way to profit without labor. They were easy targets, he said, his voice flat.
No one missed them.
Silas, less talkative, admitted to handling the acid and dismemberment, following his brother's lead. Their first victim, Hazel Dawn in Boise, was tortured for her bank pin, yielding $15,000 before they strangled her and dissolved her body. The pattern continued, each kill more refined. Tessa's confession blurred the line between victim and perpetrator. She described her initial terror in Boise but admitted that after killing Lila Fern, she felt emboldened. "They made me feel like I belonged," she said, detailing her role in luring victims and disposing of bodies. The act of cooking a kidney, she claimed, was forced, though her steady tone suggested otherwise. Eden's story was murkier. She joined willingly, drawn by Gideon's promises of wealth, and participated in the Portland murder. Her calm during the arrest raised doubts about her victimhood. Juniper, the youngest, was a tragic figure. At 16, she was a runaway coerced into luring friends to their deaths. "I see their faces every night," she sobbed, describing 3 Tacoma murders. Her cooperation helped map the brothers' movements, earning her some sympathy. The task force also traced missing women across Boise, Tacoma, and Spokane, recovering bone fragments in drains and chemical residue in rentals. The case grew into a reckoning, exposing how society overlooked vulnerable women. Public outrage flared as details hit the news. The Spokane Cannibal Killers label, though exaggerated, fueled sensational coverage. The brothers' casual brutality eating meals while dismembering bodies shocked investigators. Their father's role in shielding Gideon's early crimes came under scrutiny, raising questions about accountability. As the trial neared, the prosecution prepared to seek the death penalty for the brothers and Tessa, while weighing leniency for Clara and Juniper. The victims' families braced for a courtroom battle, their grief a silent scream for justice. The 2014 trial in Spokane's federal courthouse drew national attention. Crowds packed the gallery, from reporters to grieving families. The defendants Gideon and Silas Holt, Tessa Lorne, Eden Quill, and Juniper Reed sat in a row, their expressions ranging from Gideon's cold defiance to Juniper's tearful fear. Clara Wren, testifying as a witness and defendant, was kept separate, her cooperation earning a lighter charge. The courtroom buzzed with tension as the prosecution laid out a case of unparalleled horror. Evidence was overwhelming. Forensic reports confirmed human remains in the Spokane apartment, chemical traces in drains, and a shredder's gruesome residue. Clara and Juniper's testimonies detailed their coercion, their voices breaking as they recounted the brothers' threats. Tessa admitted to luring victims but insisted she was forced. Eden's role in the Portland murder, where a body was found mid-dismemberment, left little room for her coercion defense. The brothers showed no remorse, Gideon calling the murders a job, and Silas nodding along. The defense argued coercion for Clara and Juniper, highlighting their cooperation and fear. Tessa and Eden's defenses were weaker, their active roles undeniable. The trial exposed systemic failures, the police's initial skepticism, lax chemical sales, and society's neglect of vulnerable women. On February 14, 2014, the verdicts came: death for Gideon, Silas, Tessa, and Eden, 20 years for Juniper due to her youth, and 3 years for Clara. The victims' families wept, their closure bittersweet as they mourned daughters like Hazel Dawn and Nora Vale. The executions of Gideon, Silas, Tessa, and Eden closed a dark chapter, but Spokane remained scarred. The Hillyard Horror became a grim legend, a warning of unchecked evil. Clara, released after her sentence, vanished, haunted by guilt. Juniper, still imprisoned, sought redemption through letters of remorse. The case spurred reforms, tighter chemical regulations, better handling of missing persons cases, and advocacy for marginalized women. The victims' names Hazel, Nora, Ivy became symbols of resilience, their memorials quiet tributes in Spokane and Boise. The Shredder's unknown fate lingered, a chilling reminder of a case that exposed humanity's darkest depths.